Good evening. This is the Planning Committee meeting for of Contra Costa Transportation Authority for Wednesday, July 6th, 11th, at 6. And we have everyone in attendance. And so we're open for public comment. Does anybody have any public comment? I see nobody making public comment. I'm looking for an approval of the minutes. We'll give it to Janet this time.
Ladies first.
And now all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, we're up to the consent calendar.
Move approval.
Second.
This time it was Kevin. All those in favor? Aye. All righty, and now we're on to the regular agenda items. Are there any staff reports? No. Okay, well, that'll make this a really short meeting. Peter, would you like to address item 6.0?
Yeah, I'll start with item 6. So CCTA staff applied for a Caltrans SB1 Caltrans Sustainable Communities Planning Grant to complete a study that has been proposed both in Measure X and again in the Countywide Transportation Plan Accessible Transportation Study. We did receive the funds on a conditional basis. We have some paperwork we need to do ahead of time, and that's what this item is. It's a resolution that would authorize the executive director to execute the grant agreements and any related amendments that might come about during the process. We just need to make sure this is in place and that we get it to Caltrans. We will bring a full item to you in September regarding the oversight of the study and how that's going to be proposed to do for the authority's decision and the scope of work. So you'll get a full detailed presentation in September on this item.
If there are no public comments, I'd like to move the item.
I believe there are no public comments on this
I'll second,
item.
but I do have a question.
Okay.
What happens if SB1 goes backwards? It's mentioned in this.
Yeah. So this is funding that's already been generated through SB1 to this point. So this study will still be funded.
Okay.
I just saw it in there. I had to ask.
Okay. I believe that's all the questions we have, and therefore we're ready for a vote. All those in favor? Aye. Okay, no opposed. Item 7, Matt or Peter?
I think I'll take this one since Peter took the last one. Thank you, Chair Haskew. Tonight I'm here to talk about the electric vehicle readiness plan for Contra Costa, starting late last year and based on one of the major goals of the Countywide Transportation Plan, which was to increase deployment of electric vehicles around the county. We began talking with 511 Contra Costa and the county's sustainability coordinator to kind of think up ways to deploy EVs around the county. We decided we needed to come up with a readiness plan or a blueprint, and early this year some grant funding became available. We applied for a grant with the California Energy Commission, and in June we were awarded a $200,000 grant in order to develop this electric vehicle readiness plan, and basically this would provide a blueprint for deployment of EV charging capital and equipment around the county. It would also position Contra Costa for funding opportunities which are being made available through PG&E, through the state, and especially through Volkswagen, the settlement, and the airport. We don't want to forget you guys. Exactly, it's being channeled through the air board, and hopefully this would facilitate, mode choice and improve congestion and air quality as this expands. So tonight we're here to ask for you to authorize the executive director to develop an RFP for obtaining consultant resources for this project, as well as to sign a funding agreement with the State Energy Commission. And we're asking you tonight, without all the paperwork in hand, because we have a very tight time frame on this, and we figured we could get this out in August when things are quiet, and hopefully have a consultant on in the fall. So, second.
Question. You can move it. I'll second it. So is the 200,000 going to take care of the RFP cost for getting a consultant and then for the consultant to do the work, or it's to do the planning? Is that going to be enough money?
It will cover the main steps that we have outlined,
Okay.
and there will be a considerable amount of staff time, in-kind staff resources being used.
And when do you hope to have the completed study or blueprint?
Well, we've been given a deadline of July 1st of next year.
Okay, great. Which
Thought
is,
you'd missed it.
We think that's pretty tight, so hopefully they'll grant us some extensions there, but that is our goal right now.
well, I can tell you, both Member Hudson and I sit on the both mobile source and stationary source, and we are constantly on airboard staff to get this information out to you, and they're already working on places where they have identified need to be have these charging stations. So hopefully that will help you as you work with them, because places I would never have thought of are some of the places they're talking about. So I'm hoping that there will be good coordination between that. So I'll be happy to second Member
All right.
Hudson's motion.
That motion I made, and I have a bunch of questions too, if I can. Oddly enough, the urgency of this came about because a supervisor's battery ran out 3/4 of a mile before the charging station. I didn't say a name. I did not use a name, but I want to look on 7.2. It says potential location for shared mobility centers that could host electric vehicle fueling centers. In the study, I'd like to see somebody consider this, because I think if the numbers I'm hearing are correct, that we're around 3% for these, either the hydrogen and electric or just electric for vehicles right now, that the number is going to grow. And there are a lot of answers that are going to need to be down before we proceed on paper for planning. And I asked, well, what are you going to do if we get up to 25, 30% of these vehicles at electric? And is BART going to completely redo theirs, or are they just going to be parking structures where, oh, by the way, you've been here a while and you can't even get home? Has anybody thought about parking structures with a floor or fully electric charging without putting these things in with a card? It's simply like the Elix project where you park there. It's, for example, long-term parking at BART, $7. You park in a satellite parking structure where you're charging, it's now 7 plus 10. Instead of having somebody slide all the time, you've prepaid it when you go to BART. Is anybody looking at something like that? Because it's going to be 5 years before you build something like that.
Well, that's why the study's here, Dave. They got to do that to figure it out. I'm not as in support of putting, I mean, I would be supportive of putting them in parking structures, but we need to get them out on the road where gas stations are and where what they're looking at are large places where people go to shop so that they can get their car charged and then like go in and eat. Like the Veranda has stuff, but you know, at a Target or a Walmart or those large kind of places. So I think your question is important, but it'll be determined when this is all done.
Let me, because I know we've discussed that many times, how we can get it out, and I believe it for charging the stations that you see everywhere now. And how are you going to? You okay? The 480 or the fast charging, and there's going to be a lot of that. But what brought it to mind to me is United has a very large parking structure, and you don't have slide your card. You come in, you park, you're the one closest to the elevator, and you just plug in. And there are a lot of, with commute benefits, where these business parks would do this. And I think we need to start, I agree with everything you just heard, but there's another thing that isn't getting taken care of, and I kind of read that into that bullet that says potential mobility, what are you calling it, centers. And I think somebody needs to start designing what the new parking structure of the future is going to look like, because a lot of it's going to be electric.
Yeah, so my understanding is that they're building a new big, large, very large parking structure at SFO, and they're making some modifications to that facility. So you have ducting in the floor, in the subfloor, so you're able to run conduit in or wires in for your new next generation charging. This study is going to take a look at not only Type 2 chargers and where they should be placed, but what is the next generation of technology like Elix that we can leverage in the future, so we don't have to put all these stationary things up that you may not need in the future.
And that's all in this study. That's good. Good. Oh, we got somebody out there that might even want to talk, Luella.
I see that.
Public hearing stuff.
Public comment. Please come forward.
Yeah, she thinks I'm right.
So, hi, Deborah Allen, BART Director. Just to answer your question, it's a great question. We were updated at our last meeting. Staff is working on electric vehicle charging stations and how to incorporate those into parking lots. They're looking at a variety of different things, including even some type of a valet system where, because the challenge there is that a car doesn't need 10 hours of charging. And so they're also considering kind of thinking of new programs that would include moving vehicles around and charging them for a fee. So that's it is being studied at BART.
And we do plan on coordinating very closely with the transit agencies on this, and the bus providers especially, because they have needs for actual using electric vehicles in their service. But parking policies will be a primary task in this as well.
I just wanted to point out real quick on the schedule as well. The July 1st deadline will allow us to participate in Phase 2, in which there's actually money from the CEC to implement some of the things in the blueprint. So.
Okay. I didn't ask for the vote yet.
Oh, okay.
Now, may
You do.
may I please have the vote?
Abstain.
Okay. All those in favor? Aye. Okay, that passes unanimously. And item 8. And Martin, I guess you're up.
Yes, good evening, Madam Chair. Martin Engelman, Deputy Executive Director for Planning at CCTA. And this will be a very quick item. We released RFQ 18-3 on May 11, and it was for the preparation of community-based transportation plans, CBTPs, for local jurisdictions in Contra Costa. And we have done this in the past. Back in the mid-2000s, we prepared community-based transportation plans. They're essentially transportation plans to help low-income communities of concern get to the places they need to go, whether it be to their jobs, to their medical appointments, or shopping. And the studies look at what the barriers to transportation are and how we can remove some of those barriers. So the last time we did studies in Bay Point, on Concord, on Monument Boulevard in Concord, in downtown Martinez, and in the Richmond area. And we completed those studies for approximately $60,000 each, for a total cost of $240,000. The cost of doing one of these studies has ballooned considerably because MTC, who runs this program, has expanded the requirements for public outreach. And while we had a fairly significant public outreach effort the last time, this one will be even greater. So with that having been said, we have a total budget here of $215,000 for possibly 4 CBTPs, and we recognize that that's not enough money to get the job done. So we'll have to probably find some other source of funds, or we'll have to talk to all the jurisdictions and make some priorities as far as which ones we do first. So responses were due to the RFQ on June 11th, and we got 2 qualified proposals, one from Nelson Nygaard and one from PlaceWorks Incorporated. Staff has reviewed the proposals, and we believe they're qualified. And so tonight, we're asking for you to recommend to the authority approval to begin negotiations with these 2 consultant teams to start preparing the CBTPs. That completes my report.
So we're going to have 2 consultants, or are they vying against each other as you do the negotiations?
So there's enough work to go around.
Oh, okay.
And what we plan to do, we have 2 qualified teams, and what we plan to do is to go to the local jurisdictions and talk with them about what they want to accomplish with the CBTP, what the scope is. Some of these updates are more comprehensive than others. And then ask them if they have a preference for the consultants. Some cities have preferences. If they'd like, they will be able to have interviews with both consultants and select one. It'll be a fairly informal process since we've already addressed the competitive procurement requirements under the federal guidelines through this RFQ. So we can have rather informal discussions with the cities and set them up with a team of their choice, and maybe even have the sub-consultants work for both firms. We'll see how that works out. But we're trying to give the cities a choice within the framework of the federal guidelines as best we can do.
Any more questions or any public comment? Seeing none, may I?
Approval.
Right, thank you. And Janet is seconding, and there we are. So let's have a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? No, we're there. I believe that we have one more item because somebody moved.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair Askew and Commissioners. I'm Brad Beck, Senior Transportation Planner with the Authority. I'm here tonight to ask you to recommend to the Authority that they approve, all of you, Resolution 1845G, which would approve the 2018 Countywide Bicycle and Pedestrian Plan and its environmental document. Tonight with me is Megan Mittman from Farren Pierce, who led the consultant team that prepared the plan and conducted the public outreach. And we've prepared a short presentation if you'd like us to make that presentation.
And I appreciate you preparing it, but we've been through this and through it and through it. If it in its final form incorporates all the comments that we've had, I think Member
tried to do
Abelson
that.
is ready to make a motion.
Yes, I am. I move adoption of Resolution 18.
And,
I'll second that.
all right, so we have Abelson proposing and Mitchoff seconding, and I have a moan from the person next to me.
Just, if I may, was there, before we cut you off, was there something you want to highlight? Because she's absolutely right. I mean, we like what you've done. I mean, and the full board's going to hear it. But is there? I mean, she came all the way out here. Was there something?
She wants to get home.
I get it, but I mean,
We heard a lot from the RTPCs. We heard a lot from the public.
Okay.
We tried to respond to it in updating the countywide bikeway network. We added some more detail to the pedestrian priority areas. We've added a number of implementation tasks, including a new pedestrian needs assessment that we want to carry out after the adoption. But that's about it.
I think you've done the work. I'll do with it.
I think you do. I just have a comment, which is I really appreciate the additions to the pedestrian part. It was a little slim, and now it feels like it's an equal component of the plan. I have a motion and a second, and now I want a vote, please, or a recommendation. So all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right. I believe that is the last item, except for other business.
Oh, sure.
I actually have something to report today. Walnut Creek has this communication thing with the traffic lights. You're going to see how untechnical this report is. And Audi has technology that then captures the information from the traffic lights, and we rode in cars today that would tell us when the light was going to turn left, or, red, or turn green, how much approximate time it was. And there was one moment where even I was impressed because the light was solidly green. It looked like we were going to get through the intersection before the red light, and the countdown said, no, don't do that. It's going to be red, and it was red.
And you ran it.
No, apparently there's a funny little button in the thing that stops you from doing that. I did point out that it also would be a good way to kind of win drag races for a while you're the only person with the countdown for the green light part. But it was interesting, and I'm assured that this is one of the components of a lot more to come in terms of moving traffic and measuring traffic, and it would give us the opportunity to, say, clear paths for fire trucks and ambulances by controlling the red lights and keeping everybody on target. So I think there are many nice things to come. That's the end of my report. Anybody else have anything to say?
I actually think you had an excellent report there, and I understand Randy had something like that in Australia you want to report. You didn't go to Australia? Okay.
I do have something to add. Well, yesterday, the Board of Supervisors did vote to approve a contract for the sheriff to put cameras around Pleasant Hill BART. So I want to alert everyone, they will be used because we have some crime here, but it's been my pet peeve of people who decide that they're more important than anybody else to block intersections. And so KQED has been running this whole thing about privacy and how long it'll be stored and what have you. I can assure you the sheriff is following every protocol, but those will be up and running for those who don't have the Audi car to tell you not to run the red light.
Okay, I'm looking around and nobody else looks anxious to take up our time, so I'm going to adjourn the meeting officially, and our next meeting is September 5th. Looking forward to seeing you.